Welcome, everyone. Hi. I hope that everyone can hear. And again, if you can come forward to just kind of get more cozy and also to listen better. I don't know how good the microphone is. That would be great. My name is Patricia Rodriguez, and I am with the Tompkins County Immigrant Rights Coalition. And I want to thank first the many members, and maybe you can stand up, of the Tompkins County Immigrant Rights Coalition, especially those that were crucial in organizing this event. So if you can stand up, like if you're a member of the Tompkins County Immigrant Rights Coalition, and I also, thank you, yay, awesome. And I also wanted to thank our co-sponsors, allies, and friends, and especially the Tompkins County Worker Center that helped us organize this, and also COSH, the Council for Occupational Safety and Health. Yay! And I also need to thank the Unitarian Church, and particularly the Social Justice Council. I think that's what it's called. So thanks for the space. Okay. And of course, to our speakers, all the members, not all the members are here who wrote the report, but there's many members of people there are people that participated in this study. They're also here. And so this forum, it's called Milk Cows, Not Workers. It will be a panel presentation by the authors of this report. And if you can get the report is right here, actually. That's the cover of the report. It's called Milked: Immigrant Dairy Farm Workers in New York State. The study was co-authored by a team of academic scholars and community leaders. Carly Fox of the Workers' Justice Center of New York is here with us. Yay. Rebecca Fuentes of the Workers' Center of Central New York in Syracuse. Also, two authors who are not here, Fabiola Ortiz Valdez and Gretchen Purser, both of Syracuse University, couldn't come. But we have here Kathleen Sexsmith of Cornell University. And we also have here with us Crispin Hernandez. He is the lead plaintiff in a historic lawsuit for the right to collectively bargain for the labor rights of farm workers. And we also have other members whom I didn't write down their names, so maybe they can just say their names if you want to. ¿Quieren decir su nombre?
Hi, everybody. My name is Victoriano Hernandez. I am the member of the Alianza Agrícola en Geneseo. I am from Guatemala. Hi, everybody. My name is Jose. I am a member of the Worker Center, Central New York.
Hi, my name is Joel. I'm a member of the Worker Center, Central New York.
So I just want to talk a little bit very shortly about, and I know that they're going to speak much more to the report, but it is a very important report. It's based on face-to-face interviews conducted in the span of 2 years recently with 88 immigrant dairy farm workers and 53 different dairy farms in New York State. The report documents abuses, wage theft, and dangerous working conditions. You'll hear the panelists speak about this, but it seems like this is an extremely worrisome moment and extremely worrisome information that we're going to be getting from them that rarely gets out about people that live among us. And they are our neighbors. They contribute to our sustenance and our communities with much. At a time in which predominant emotions among immigrant communities are fear of deportation, fear of losing jobs, fear of not being able to provide or protect their families, fear of separation from their families. This report stands out as a cry for truth, for adherence to rights, and to a very basic proposition that we all live with and in dignity, and with equal rights. It's also notable for the participatory action model that it followed, with workers being active participants in the construction of the survey instruments and other aspects of the study. Also of extreme important moment, this historic lawsuit with Crispina Hernandez and the New York Civil Liberties Union, as well as the organizations that you will hear about today, versus the state, New York State and the governor. It's the first arguments in Hernandez versus New York State were presented on Thursday, July 20th. Nearly 80 years since Fair Labor Standards Act in 1938, this act stipulated rights such as the 40-hour work week, minimum wage, overtime pay, but it excluded farm workers. Later in the 60s, some of the FLSA began to apply to farm workers, but not overtime pay and other provisions. Agricultural Workers Protection Act of 1983 included some provisions about employers needing to take responsibility for adequate housing and safety and labor contract standards. But reality is that many of these standards contain exclusions and don't apply to farm workers. The situation is one that is described as plantation-like conditions, exploitation, abuse, to add to the grossly inadequate health standards in the work and in their housing situations. We live in an era in which immigrants are being denigrated in the workplace, but also by the US and many state governments, as well as employers. They are called criminals. Immigrants are called criminals. At the same time that the majority of them provide for our milk, our food, and the services we buy or use, such as restaurants, hotels, etc. We live in a world where lobby groups act via a variety of mechanisms, such as state farm bureaus and others, to establish even more problematic legislation, many times protecting large firms or employers who seek to ensure profit, with arguments such as, quote, granting collective bargaining rights makes us unable to compete in the global economy, or the business sets itself apart from others because the animals, the cows, require constant care. Those are the arguments. Which is one of the reasons why this lawsuit marks a historical moment, a moment of resistance, of saying basta. If a favorable decision is reached in the case, more than 60,000 farm workers in New York will finally have the right to collective bargaining after 8 decades of exclusion from this basic right. It will likely improve things for other farm workers as well, in general. It will guarantee access to justice when rights are violated. It will mean that laws do not continue to violate our constitutional rights by excluding the most vulnerable workers. While it's a great privilege to have these panelists here with us, it's also critically important to acknowledge that there are local groups and organizations doing this kind of work here in this county and more broadly in the region. And so as I call them out, I ask them to please stand out so that if you would like to speak to them at the end of the presentation, you can recognize them. These are local groups that address issues and advocate for immigrant workers' rights. Carlos Gutierrez, can you stand up? He leads the Tompkins County Workers Center Occupational Safety and Health Program. He's one of the center's primary worker advocates and coordinates its immigrant workers' rights outreach and organizing efforts. Since 2010, the Workers Center has done farm worker outreach and occupational safety and health trainings to guard against preventable accidents. Next is Tom Joyce. I don't know what Tom is. Tom. He is with the Mid-State Council for Occupational Safety and Health. The council uses training, education, and advocacy to improve health and safety conditions in all workplaces, including farm workers and other low-wage workers in the region. And also Mary Jo Dudley. Where's Mary Jo? And she has some students here too that are working with her, that if you want to stand up and say who you are. There you go. Yay. Mary Jo is the director of the Cornell Farm Workers Program and faculty member at Cornell's Department of Development Sociology. As the director of the Farm Workers Program, her work focuses on improving the living and working conditions of farm workers and their families. The program conducts research that examines the contributions of farm workers to the economic and social fabric of New York State. Mary Jo's research on improving workplace relations engages farmers and farm workers in discussions of workplace communication challenges and a joint exploration of strategies to improve the well-being of farm workers. The website is www.farmworkers.cornell.edu. So if you do want to get in touch with them, they'll be sticking around at the end as well. So just to sort of go give you a little idea of what the program is like, we're going to hear from the panelists for about 45 minutes, if that's possible. And then we're going to take a break. We are going to, part of that break is we're going to make a pitch for financial contributions. And these financial contributions will help to pay for an honorarium for the speakers at the forum, but also contribute to the work of the Tompkins County Immigrant Rights Coalition. We're doing things such as these events and others to continue to raise attention to issues, especially the root causes of migration, U.S. policy internally and to other countries, in Latin America specifically. We try to provide a bridge to legal access to immigrants, and we organize a rapid response network aimed at documenting the presence and actions of ICE and immigration officials in this county. If you're interested in speaking to being part of this, speak to one of us at the end as well. So then we'll break for a few minutes. There's some refreshments and some snacks, and after that we'll do a Q&A. So we'll leave the Q&A, the questions, to the end in the name of like all the speakers getting to speak what they want. And in the Q&A, I just want to ask that you keep your comments very short, your questions very short, so that we can get a variety of different questions answered. And after that, if we have time, we can mingle around. Okay, so that's the plan, and thank you for being here. Okay. Will you introduce yourself?
Sure. Yeah. Okay. Thanks, Patricia. Thank you very much, everyone, for coming, and to our wonderful sponsors. I'm Kathy Sexsmith. I recently finished a PhD at Cornell, and I did my dissertation research on the very topic we're discussing today, but it was mostly separate from the surveys that we conducted for this project. And so my purpose, I'm going to try to be brief and concise and tell you how we did the research and what the major findings were. And then I'll leave it to our farm worker speakers and our advocacy speakers to talk about the fight that's going on at the level of the New York State government right now. Okay, so the objectives of this report, or it's primarily an advocacy report. It was designed with advocacy purposes in mind to elicit the types of information that can be used in activities such as speaking to senators, speaking to the public, providing really needed information about the daily life on the farm for undocumented immigrant farm workers. And the report ends with several policy recommendations to the New York government, which we'd be very happy to take questions and answers answers on at the end. So the way that we did this research, as was already mentioned by Patricia, it was a collaboration between the Workers' Center, the Workers' Justice Center, and researchers from Cornell and from Syracuse. And I want to emphasize that everybody participated equally in the process. It wasn't just academics doing the research or designing and the worker advocates joining after. It was definitely an extremely collaborative process all throughout. And we did it as a participatory action design. And so farm workers helped design the interview. They helped tell us when our questions were kind of off base. They helped add important information that was missing. They transcribed and they analyzed the data. So we think that this really helps to improve the quality of our findings because farm workers were guiding us throughout the research process. We've already talked about the number of interviews that we did. And we focused our research efforts on the central, the northern, and the western parts of New York. And this is because those are the parts of New York State where the largest farms are clustered. And immigrant workers most often work on large workers. On our sample were in farms with at least 500 dairy cows, and where they do mostly milking labor. So that was a reason for really capturing the dynamics on the farms where most workers live. And the interviews were conducted in 2014 and 2015. So the overarching finding of the report, as the title clearly suggests, is that dairy farm workers are being milked themselves by a system that excludes them from basic labor rights. With Patricia already did a very nice job of sort of outlining for us the gaps in labor laws to protect farm workers. Immigrant or not, these gaps apply to everyone working in the industry. And the point of the report was certainly not to call out any particular farmer or draw attention to one particular place, but to point out that the regulatory structure of the industry creates gaps where, unfortunately, abusive labor situations sometimes arise. And so I think it's also important to mention in carrying out this research, we didn't, some people have asked me this, so I'm going to address it now. It's not like we went to farms where we knew there was a really bad labor situation and only interviewed farms to elicit really bad experiences. We tried to definitely draw out those stories, but to achieve a more representative finding. So on various occasions, we would go to a place where simply somebody that we had interviewed knew somebody else, and we used what's called a snowballing method to find another worker and for him to share their story, but it wasn't like we went into the research already knowing exactly what we were going to find. I think that's important. And a problematic finding that results in this context of sort of regulatory gaps is that 80% of the workers, an overwhelming number of those we interviewed, ultimately feel like the farmer found that they felt like their farmer cared more about the cows than the workers. And so that was a result of certain statements that people made, things like, the cow is the person who makes the profit, and I'm just a worker who can be exchanged for another on a farm. And that was the percentage that responded to that statement as a result of these regulatory problems. Okay. So the three main areas that we look at the report is basically the labor context, the health and safety context, and the social context. So when we look at the labor context, we find that workers tend to work extremely long hours, on average 12 hours a day. On larger farms, it's more likely that they'll work that in one sort of solid shift, and on smaller farms, it's more likely to be broken up for different shorter periods throughout the day. On that small farm context, that usually is extremely exhausting. For example, it's common to find someone who works from 3 a.m. to 9 a.m. and then again from 3 p.m. to 9 p.m. as an example. And so workers would tell us, I feel like I never have enough time to sleep. I don't get enough rest, and it's really difficult for just the body to adapt to that. We also found that in some cases, I'm sure this will come up in the discussion, farm workers often want to work a lot of hours, they want to make money, but sometimes they're asked to work more hours than they feel like they're really able to. And we did hear several reports of people saying they were terrified to tell their boss that they wanted to work less hours out of the fear of losing their job. So we did hear that. On average, farm workers are making, and this was in 2014, 2015, the average wage was $9.32 an hour, so that hovers just above the minimum. At the time of the research, the minimum wage was $8 in 2014 and $8.75 in 2015. And something else that we found is that raises are extremely irregular and unpredictable for workers and tend not to be much more than about 25 cents at a time. And so they feel like once they enter the job, often it's kind of a stagnant rate of pay, even if they work for several years on the same farm. And another finding was that 28% of those we asked this question said they have knowingly experienced wage theft. And so that's sometimes in the form of just paying less than the minimum wage, but it's more often in more discreet ways. So for example, sometimes workers are asked to pay for their own protective equipment. Sometimes they work more hours. They're asked to work an extra couple of hours on their shift and it doesn't show up on their paycheck. And sometimes there's several farms we've heard of where when they first arrive on the farm, they're asked to leave a financial deposit, basically their first week's pay, they don't receive it, because that way the farmer can withhold it if they leave suddenly. So it's a way to sort of encourage people not to suddenly leave the job, but that amounts to wage theft when they're not being paid for those hours. Okay, the second main area of the study is health and safety. And so we found that workers outlined several primary areas of danger, and I think what's important to remember is that the incident of injury and accident on farms, it's through very routine tasks. So it's not necessarily when you're asked to do something unusual that you're not well prepared to do, but it's often through the day-to-day activities on the farm. And so the number one source of danger that our interviewees identified was aggressive cows and bulls. 71% mentioned that as a source of danger. And the worker who is pictured in the image, he was unfortunately attacked by a bull when it was left in the stable with the calves on a small dairy. And he hadn't received any warning from his employer that there was a bull around him. And so he didn't know he wasn't trained to deal with the situation. And it was quite a serious injury. The second major area of danger is heavy machinery. We find that a lot of workers describe working on tractor equipment that they haven't been trained by the farmer to use, but by their coworkers. And so as a result of that, they're not entirely sure of how to properly operate the machinery. And we've heard several reports of failing brakes, of people who accidentally run into their coworker, or things like the machine flipping and they're not sure how to control it sometimes. And so sometimes the machinery is faulty and that leads to these injuries as well. The third biggest source of danger that they told us about was chemicals. And so workers often use everything from iodine, forms of acid, peroxide, copper sulfate, formaldehyde for different activities, which might be cleaning the hooves, cleaning fungus from hooves, cleaning the milk tank, or even just cleaning the teats in the milking parlor. And so several people would talk about situations where a chemical had splashed into their eyes, and it was very dangerous, and sometimes there's not an eye washing station nearby in order to quickly clear their vision. And so that was a source of fear for workers who worked around those chemicals. And then finally, slippery and insecure conditions. And so workers talked about just sort of the sheer nature of the job. I mean, you're milking a cow, there's excrement, there's different things, there's milk, there's different sort of liquids in the surfaces of the milking parlor, and they described that as something that made them slip and fall very frequently. And so as a result of all these different types of danger, Carly, if you want to change the slide. We found that 2 out of 3 of the workers that we interviewed had an injury that they considered serious. Most of the 4 types I just described. And 68% said that they needed medical attention for their injury. And so the majority of those workers were able to receive medical attention. But again, that comes down to who they know, who can give them a ride to the hospital. and whether whether they feel comfortable going out on the roadway to go to the hospital. And so usually it comes down to the farmer providing a ride, but oftentimes we heard stories that the farmers did not provide a ride when it was needed. 73% felt that the protective equipment was not sufficient. And as we mentioned, about 1/3 said that they had received no training whatsoever, and most of the rest are trained by their coworkers. And so in certain situations, this leads to sort of a lack of protocol that would be extremely helpful for preventing accidents and injuries. And so one of the reasons why there is so much injury on dairy farms is that OSHA is not allowed to set foot on where the vast majority of dairy farm workers work. And so I'm sure this will come up later in the presentation, but there's a congressional rider that basically says, unless you have 11 full-time non-family workers on your farm, it's too small for us to set foot there, and they're not allowed to spend any money on inspection or enforcement activity on farms of that size. And so even when someone is killed on a farm, OSHA is not allowed, if it's that small, to come and see what went wrong and if some sort of enforcement activity needs to take place. And so the worker featured in the slide is Marco Antonio from Huehuetenango, Guatemala. And he passed away in 2014 on a small organic dairy in the Penyan area when he was trapped trying to clean an auger in a grain silo. And his co-workers later shared that he didn't feel like he knew exactly how to do that. And so he got mangled in the machinery as a result of sort of being asked to do something that he felt he wasn't comfortable doing. Okay, and the final area that we look at in the report is social life in the housing situation. And so 97% of the workers that we interviewed lived in housing that the farmers provided. But the one major issue is that because dairy farm work is not seasonal work, it's year-round work, what happens is there's a lack of inspection over the quality of the housing under the Migrant Agricultural Workers Protection Act. People who work in the H2A workers in the apple industry, for example, would have their housing inspected, but dairy farm workers usually do not. And so again, this is sort of up to the discretion of the individual employer to make sure that the housing is in good order. And as a result, we found that 58% of those we interviewed reported having some sort of infestation of bugs or cockroaches, that kind of thing. Almost half didn't have locks on their doors, and there have been, several years ago, some pretty major robberies, which were quite violent, and so this can be a really significant safety problem. And then the other major problems that we found were holes in the floor and the walls, ventilation, and the bathroom. And sometimes, unfortunately, there are farms where there's not enough space for the workers on the farm. So for example, maybe one bathroom for 10 people was a situation that we found, or 10 people living in a trailer that only had 2 bedrooms. And so overcrowding is also a significant source of discomfort for workers. In addition to this, farm workers live, unfortunately, a very socially isolated life. Because of the immigration enforcement activity in the area, 75% said that they're afraid to leave the farm. Sometimes they do anyway, but they experience fear for that reason. We didn't do any research in the North Country for this report, but the experience that we've all had close to the border suggests that the more Border Patrol agents there are, the less likely workers will leave the farm at all. And so we've met workers who never leave the farm. But the ones that we talked to left on average every 11 days. So that's basically the result of some people say they leave once a week to do their shopping, and some people say they leave every 2 weeks to do their shopping, and then maybe some have a social visit on the way. But on average, they live out the vast majority of their time on the farm itself. And 41% of our interviewees had been detained, not necessarily deported, but stopped and detained by either local police, a sheriff, or a Border Patrol agent during their time in this region of New York. Oh, yes, Carly says we interviewed in North Country, but not right on the border. That's the difference. And so In this context, workers have very strongly described feelings of social isolation and feeling alone. 57% said that they did not agree with the statement that I belong to this community. They felt they didn't belong. 62% described isolation and 80% described depression, mostly because of missing their families at home. And I'd like to point out that a lot of the organizations that Patricia mentioned at the beginning, including Mary Jo's Farm Worker Program, Carly's Worker Justice Center, and Rebecca's Worker Center of Central New York, I've worked with all of these organizations and seen the fantastic work that they do trying to mitigate that sense of isolation and trying to provide both legal services and sort of social support in times of great need. So these are really important organizations in our community. So that summarizes the main findings of the report. I'm more than happy to answer any questions about the process or the findings. But I'd just like to say thank you for being here and pass the mic along to someone who will share a personal story of their experience in this industry. So that you can have a break.
Buenas noches a todos. Mi nombre es Crispín Hernández, miembro de Centro de Trabajadores.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Crispina Hernandez. I'm a member of the Worker Center.
Yo soy un trabajador agrícola. Trabajé en Marfam más de 3 años y medio.
I am a farm worker. I've worked at Mark's Farms for more than 3.5 years.
Cuando entré no me dieron entrenamiento necesario como trabajador, como mencionó mi compañera, con los mismos trabajadores o mis compañeros no me enseñaron y no me dieron entrenamiento necesario.
Like my colleague said, when I started, I didn't receive any training. There was no training that was provided.
Yo no sabía nada de mi derecho, no. Incluso los dueños no. Más bien, el dueño no me dijo mis derechos y no me dio entrenamiento, no.
I didn't know anything about my rights. The owners of the farm didn't teach me anything about what my legal rights were.
Incluso trabajé primero mi trabajo fue juntando piedra a los terrenos del dueño.
And sometimes my work included gathering up stones at the house of the farmer.
Y ya luego cuando entré a trabajar con las vacas, sinceramente, pues una vaca pisó mi mano, pero nunca me dijeron cómo llegar al hospital.
And when I started working, one of the cows stepped on my hand and I was never given any help on how to get to medical help.
Luego tenía yo un cita en el hospital y es donde fui mi cita y es donde vieron mi mano que estaba muy mal y lo atendieron.
And then later I was able to get an appointment at the hospital and they saw my hand was very injured.
Y ya luego cuando llegó el bill, pues yo le di al patrón y él lo pagó, porque yo le dije que fue de mi mano cuando fui al hospital.
And I gave the bill to the farmer and he paid the bill because I said it was from when my hand was injured by a cow.
Así con el tiempo, igual cuando se curó mi mano, me pusieron a ordeñar las vacas, ¿no? Un trabajo que es tan pesado y mucha presión.
And so when my hand was recovered, I was given the work to milk the cows, which is a very hard work to do.
Yo ordeñaba como 2,500 vacas por 7 horas.
And I would milk about 2,800 cows every 7 hours.
La rutina es primero echaba yo el yodo, mi otro compañero venía exprimiendo las vacas y ya luego regresaba yo a limpiar las vacas, ¿no? Y ya luego al último conectaba las máquinas para que se ordeñen las vacas.
The routine is like this. First you spray the iodine and then you do a spray, then you milk, then you go to milk and you connect the machinery to the tits.
fue pasando el tiempo, pero yo veía muchas injusticias, lo que es el dueño también, cómo insultaba a mis compañeros, incluso yo me gritaba cosas que estaba mal, ¿no? Y eso no está bien.
Time passed, and I saw how the management and owners would insult the workers and say really awful things to us, and I felt insulted myself.
Incluso pues yo compraba los guantes largos para para proteger mis manos por las spray para el trabajo que hacía yo era muy difícil, ¿no? Yo protegía mi mano porque aunque los dueños no lo daban, yo lo compraba $10 la caja por 50 pares.
So, and I would have to buy large, long gloves to protect my hands because there was spray and it was really hard on our bodies. And so I would buy the box of gloves that was $10 for 50.
El 2013 conocí a Carly como trabaja haciendo de justicia y Rebeca.
In 2013, I met Carly, who was in the Worker Justice Center, and Rebecca.
Me dieron como una plática de salud y seguridad. Ahí es donde me di cuenta que yo como trabajador tengo derecho.
And they gave us a training about health and safety, and that's when I started to understand what were my rights to health and safety.
Sí, con el tiempo fue pasando y eso seguía pasando seguido, maltrato, incluso, como dije, no nos daba entrenamiento necesario, incluso trabajaba yo 6 días a la semana, 12 horas, me tocaba, había dos turnos, ¿no? Y me tocaba trabajar de día y de noche.
And time went by, and the treatment continued to be bad. What I did was work 6 days a week, 12-hour shifts. There's 2 different types of shifts. There's day and night, and sometimes I would work day, and sometimes I would work night.
Sí, donde cuando el 2015, el supervisor, más bien el yerno del patrón que golpeó a mi compañero, no lo sacó como un asalto físico que lo golpeó al frente de todos de mis compañeros.
And then in 2015, the manager, who's actually the son-in-law of the owner, actually physically assaulted one of my colleagues in front of a whole bunch of coworkers.
Pues yo, sabiendo un poquito de mi derecho, yo le apoyé, incluso pues lo animé, fue al hospital y luego, conociendo la organización, organizamos no hacer una protesta en el rancho porque no es justo lo que pasó.
And knowing my rights, I helped him out. I got motivated, and I got in touch with the organizations, and I helped him get to the hospital, and we all organized a protest in front of the farm.
Sí, ya con el tiempo, pues ya me empecé, ya luego tomé una decisión de como organizar a mis compañeros del rancho, ¿no? Como mejorar las condiciones, por ejemplo, que me dieran gratis los guantes.
And with time, I organized with my coworkers so that all of us would be able to get the longer gloves.
Sí, yo invité a 4 trabajadores y invité a Rebeca. Estábamos en una plática de salud y seguridad en la traila, ¿no? Lo que es lo que daba el dueño, ¿no?
And with 4 other workers, and Rebecca came, and we did a training on health and safety.
Sí, ya luego estábamos en la plática y llegó el hijo del dueño, se enteró de eso y llegó a interrogarnos a Rebeca y a nosotros como trabajadores también.
And while we were in the training, the son of the owners came because he found out about the training, and he came to ask us questions and interrogate us.
Sí, llegó el hijo del patrón, pues lo que dijo, si estábamos de acuerdo para que iba a llamar la policía, y sí lo hizo, llamó a la policía estatal y del condado.
And so this son of the owners said, "Are you prepared for me to call the police?" And then he did it, and the state police and the county sheriff came.
Yo estaba en esa plática, pero ya era mi hora libre, ya trabajé 12 horas y estaba yo en esa plática, pero lo que hizo el patrono, o el patrón y el hijo, es como una táctica de intimidación lo que hizo el hijo para intimidar a nosotros trabajadores y a la organizadora también, Rebeca Fuente.
And I was on my free time. I had just finished my 12-hour shift, and what the strategy that the son of the owners had was an act of intimidation, to intimidate workers and intimidate the organizer who was there, Rebecca.
Decidimos hacer la plática dentro de 8 días y ya luego solo yo fui y mi otro compañero que se llama Saúl. Los demás, los 3 compañeros ya no quisieron ir porque lo intimidaron con la policía, ya no quisieron ir.
1 week later, we came back together to organize another meeting, and my coworker Saul came and I was there, but 3 of the other workers who had been at that first training were too scared to come.
Decidimos ir traila por traila repartiendo boletines diciendo lo que pasó hace 8 días, ¿no? Y no estábamos de acuerdo, ¿no? Porque no estábamos haciendo nada malo, solo estábamos como una plática, incluso para clase de inglés o mejorar las condiciones, pero el dueño no quiere decir nuestro derecho y no, por eso esa es la táctica que hicieron ellos.
And we decided to go trailer by trailer, distributing information about our rights, talking about what had been doing, which is really talking about how we were going to learn English and try to have classes around English, or that we wanted to improve the conditions. So we decided to explain what we were doing to everybody.
Sí, el otro día pues nos despide injustamente yo y mi compañero Saúl.
And the next day they fired us unjustly, me and my colleague Saul.
Gracias a ese momento tuvimos el apoyo del Centro de Justicia y Centro de Trabajadores que nos apoyó, por ejemplo, cómo conseguir una casa porque nos sacaron como en el rancho.
And Worker Justice Center and Worker Center Central New York helped us, thank God, because we had to find a place to live and they helped us find housing.
Sí, ese momento pues todo lo que pasó, cuando salimos del rancho todo salió a la luz.
And so then when we left the farm, everything came to light.
Eso fue mi historia, pero quiero como trabajador, estoy viendo la industria lechera que todo el estado está pasando eso. Hay robo de salario, accidente, como asalto físico, no nos dan entrenamiento necesario.
I want to share my story as a worker because in all of the industry, these things are happening. Wage theft, lack of training, physical assaults.
Como vieron el reporte, pues el reporte es muy real, ¿no? Y si tienen duda, pues ahorita podemos contestar sus preguntas.
And the report is very real, and so if you have any doubts about it, you can ask us questions.
Los trabajadores agrícolas estamos excluidos 3, lo que es no tenemos la protección derecho de organizar las horas extras, un día libre a la semana.
Farm workers don't have the right to protection from retaliation when we're organizing, or for overtime pay, or right to a day of rest.
Sí, incluso pues los patrones tratan más a nosotros como trabajadores que a las vacas.
The bosses treat us as workers worse than they do the cows.
Y eso no es justo, pues todos somos humanos, todos tenemos familia y que nos traten con respeto y dignidad, pero ellos no lo hacen.
And this isn't right. We all have family, and all we want and deserve is respect and dignity.
Gracias.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Jose. Yo les voy a contar un poco de la historia. Yo trabajé en la lechería donde Crispin estuvo trabajando también, que se llama Mar Farm.
I'm going to tell you a bit of my same story. I worked on the farm that Crispin just talked about, Mark's Farms.
Es muy difícil para mí poder, de hecho, bueno, cuando yo llegué a Mar Farm, había una serie de problemas que es el tiempo que le dan a una línea de vacas para poder ordeñar. Es demasiado difícil porque solo éramos 3 trabajadores, teníamos que ordeñar 80 vacas de un lado, 80 del otro. Era un periodo como de media hora. Son 15.
When I first arrived to Mark's Farms, there was a series of problems, particularly related to milking a long line of cows. Between 3 workers, we had to milk 80 cows on each side.
Yo llegaba yo con la ropa limpia y cuando salía yo del trabajo era color entre verde y café.
I would get to work pretty clean, my clothes would be clean, but when I left work, I would be somewhere between green and brown.
Y el problema no solamente era eso, que fuera el color, sino que era el color porque era el spray que le echaban a las tetas de las vacas y era el orín de las vacas y el excremento de las vacas.
This color was due to the spray that we would have to spray onto the teats of the cows, the urine, and the excrement of the cows.
Aparte de eso, terminaba yo bañado. Todo el tiempo tenía yo que andar corriendo porque estaba un reloj enfrente que cada momento que sacábamos una línea de vacas, volteábamos y decías, oh, 5 minutos, 5 minutos.
I would be just covered by the time I finished, and every time we would run back and we would look at the clock to change the line of cows, and we would say, oh, there's only 5 minutes, there's only 5 minutes.
Pero solamente había vacas, bueno, se pasaban en ocasiones algunas vacas, se cruzaban porque hay vacas que entran demasiado rápido en la línea, entonces salían, tenías que volver a entrarlas y en ese periodo 5 minutos al final son 15 minutos, entonces el lechero llegaba y nos regañaba.
So the cows would often get mixed up. We would be running back and forth because we had to work so fast. And then we'd have to go and bring them back, and the farmer would be yelling at us because we didn't have enough time. The 15 minutes would be up when we still needed more time.
Entonces, el dueño, el yerno del patrón, es el que estaba ahí viendo, solamente se nos quedaba viendo y movía la cabeza como decir, no puedes. Y
The son-in-law would end up watching us, and he would basically look at us shaking his head like, you can't do it.
yo pues hacía todo lo que podía yo, ¿no? O sea, decía, mueve las máquinas, ve a limpiar. La primera semana yo no estaba acostumbrado a trabajar con vacas. El esfuerzo demasiado que se hace en una lechería siempre es andar corriendo, con la ropa húmeda, con los pies húmedos, con las manos se inflaman. De hecho, una semana casi no puedes ni mover las manos, se inflaman totalmente.
So I did everything that I could. I did my best to move the machines, to do the difficult work. But in the first week, I wasn't used to it. It was really hard. I was running back and forth. My clothes were wet, my feet were wet, and my hands got really swollen. And I got to the point where I couldn't move my hand.
Y en ocasiones también recibíamos malas palabras del yerno del patrón, que es el que siempre estaba ahí. Y pues de la vivienda, pues ni qué decir. Las chinches que había ahí no me dejaban dormir ni siquiera.
So we would hear a lot of nasty words from the son-in-law and the boss. And in the housing, it was particularly bad. There was all sorts of bugs, and they were bothering me all the time.
Cuando me dijeron, hey, este es tu cuarto. Y entré yo a ese cuarto y dije, pero si solo hay una cama y somos dos, ¿qué vamos a hacer? Y lo que hicieron es de que un trabajador trabajaba de noche y uno de día. Mi compañero trabajaba de día mientras que yo trabajaba de noche. Entonces cuando él se iba a trabajar, en el día yo regresaba de trabajar y yo dormía en esa cama. Pero en realidad era una infestación de chinches que un día pues igual no aguantaba yo porque era tanta la picazón. Decidí ir a comprar un spray, se llama Ride, creo, y decidí sprayar todo el cuarto y me estaba yo intoxicando por el mismo spray. Entonces lo que hice es tirarme por la ventana para afuera y agarrar aire porque ya no podía yo respirar.
Okay, so when I got there, they said, this is your room, but there was only one bed in the room, and I had to share it with another worker. And so he would work during the night, and I would work during the day, and so we would just literally take turns sleeping in that bed, depending on who was working. But it was infested with bugs, and it was really, really itchy all the time. And it got to the point where I had to fumigate the room myself and felt completely intoxicated. And I basically had to throw myself out the window to escape the fumes from fumigating.
Entonces al ver todo eso que me estaba pasando y todo los problemas que veía yo constantemente ahí, decidí irme a otra lechería. Yo dije, tal vez esta es la única lechería que esto me va a suceder, ¿no? Y agarré y decidí, un compañero me invitó, el mismo compañero que vivía conmigo, dice, hey, me dijeron que está una lechería mejor. ¿Te animas a ir? Y dije, sí, vamos. Y ya cuando yo llegué, es la misma cosa, o sea, había maltrato verbal, no solamente por el patrón de esa lechería, sino que había un empleado que era americano, era familiar creo que del patrón, y él exigía demasiado y cuando se enojaba dejaba el trabajo botado y tenía que venir el compañero, un mexicano de Veracruz, tenía que venir a terminar su trabajo.
Okay, so when I saw all of this, I thought, these problems, I mean, maybe it's only happening on this farm. And so then a coworker said to me, let's go, maybe we can find a better farm. And so I agreed and I went with him, but I found the same situation. There was verbal abuse from the farm owner and from an American coworker who I think was family of the farmer. And they were just asking way too much of me. They were very demanding. And eventually another worker had to come to help finish the work because there was so much work that my colleague couldn't finish it all.
En esa lechería no podíamos salir, es una zona muy cercana a Canadá, creo el lugar se llama Champlain, algo así. Es demasiado difícil porque ahí los patrones hacen lo que quieren con los trabajadores y no hay problema porque los trabajadores tenemos miedo. En mi persona todo el tiempo he tenido miedo, hasta ahorita pues, me animo a hablar con ustedes porque en realidad tenemos miedo hasta nuestros propios compañeros. Si yo quiero ir a visitar a un compañero que no conozco, ellos se sienten intimidados. En realidad existen muchos miedos, bastantes miedos. En ocasiones no solo son miedos, sino que esos miedos pasan a ser víctimas y algunas peores, ¿no? Entonces,
So in that farm, it was a really difficult area. It was very close to Canada. It was the Lake Champlain area, and we couldn't go out. We couldn't leave the farm. And it felt like the bosses could do whatever they wanted to do with the workers. And I've always been really afraid until now. Actually, I felt too afraid to say anything about this situation now that I'm here with you. And other workers have often felt very intimidated, and the fear makes us into victims or worse.
es la razón por la que yo estoy hablando, es porque yo empecé a defender a un compañero, era un compañero de un mexicano, que su hermano se había ido, entonces él se quedó en su lugar. Su trabajo era sencillo, ¿no? Entonces, supuestamente sencillo, ¿no? Pero en realidad no hay trabajo sencillo en las lecherías. El problema era de que ese encargado americano le decía, mueve las pinches vacas, o decía una palabra, decía. Y entonces...
So that's why I'm here talking to you today. For example, I'd see a Mexican coworker one time. His brother had left, and so he came to take his place. And it seemed like an easy job, but actually there's no such thing as an easy job on a dairy farm. And in fact, I had an American supervisor who would yell things at us like, move the goddamn cows, or even worse language.
Y por eso hoy estamos luchando por los derechos de los trabajadores, porque hay muchos problemas en las lecherías. Hay lecherías con el equipo de seguridad, como lo han mencionado en el, ¿cómo se llama? Como han mencionado en el reporte. Creo que ahí hay algunas cosas que aún faltan, entonces falta mencionar. En realidad hay bastantes problemas. Hay problemas con la forma como se le explica a las personas que son origen, la mayoría hispana. Entonces, el sistema de gobierno te da documentación, ¿no? al empleado, o al empleador, digo, para dárselo a los empleados. Pero ¿qué pasa cuando esos empleados no hablan o no saben leer o escribir? Entonces, realmente es un pedazo de papel que ellos no van a entender.
So that's why I'm here fighting for workers' rights. There's even more problems that haven't been mentioned so far in the presentation. For example, safety problems that have been documented in the report. And there's lots of things that were left unsaid. One of the problems is that most of us here are of Hispanic origin, and the government system gives a lot of documentation to the employer to give to the workers, but we often can't read those papers.
Hay problemas, por ejemplo, ¿qué pasa con los trabajadores que están trabajando con temperaturas calientes y de repente salen a temperaturas frías o viceversa? ¿Qué pasa cuando los trabajadores trabajan fuera de la lechería? En el caso mío, en esa misma lechería que les estoy mencionando o les mencioné hace un momento, caía nieve, yo tenía que ir a quitar las llantas de la montaña esa de comida de vacas. Entonces mi ropa quedaba totalmente húmeda, no tenía yo forma de dónde ir a comprar mi ropa ropa de invierno. Los patrones no se preocupaban, hey, mira, me sobra un overall, o mira, te lo regalo o te lo vendo. Ellos solamente a lo suyo. Y entonces yo sentía, recuerdo ese día que yo sentía yo que estaba yo muriéndome de frío, ahora sí que de frío, yo parecía paleta y yo no podía yo casi ni moverme. Y le dije al patrón, le dije, ¿puedo ir a cambiarme? No me siento bien, estoy demasiado frío. Y dice, no, ya nomás te faltan 2 horas, termina y ya te vas a tu casa.
So some of the problems are like the extremely high temperature, but then vice versa, all of a sudden it's extremely cold. For example, at the last dairy farm I worked at, I was working outside. And it was the winter time and the snow was falling and I had to move the tires off a big tower of food for the cows, but my clothing got extremely wet and I had nowhere to buy new winter clothes. And so the best I could do was the boss would give me an extra pair of overalls that he had hanging around, and basically left us to ourselves to deal with the problem. And I felt like I was dying of cold, like I was a popsicle. I couldn't move. But the boss said to me, you have to finish 2 more hours on your shift.
Bueno, y el otro es de que yo les pido a los compañeros que estén aquí que las lecherías realmente no son nada fácil, es demasiado difícil. También los trabajadores, como tanto las vacas, también se enferman de lo mismo. Las pezuñas de las vacas, si ustedes han visto, la mayoría de los ranchos les ponen una maderita en el casco de la vaca y después y hasta que se les caen, pues ya entonces vuelven a caminar. Eso es cuando los rancheros curan a las vacas de algún tipo de hongo. A nosotros nos pasa lo mismo, el sudor del trabajo, del sacrificio, del esfuerzo que hacemos todos los días, más la humedad. Nos pasa lo mismo. La mayoría de las uñas de los trabajadores la van a encontrar negra. Entonces, creo que compañeros de lechería se merecen un fuerte aplauso, yo creo, y más apoyo. Gracias, eso era todo.
¿Dices que quitan la cola?
No, el hongo.
Yeah. Okay. So, for example, nothing's really hard on the, nothing's easy on the dairy farm. Everything's really hard. And both cows and people can get sick. So for example, the farmers have a way of dealing with the fungus that grows on the hooves of the cow and sort of forcing it off by applying pressure to it. And basically the same thing happens to us. If you look at our nails, they're extremely black. And so basically, I want to say that all of the colleagues and the other workers who are here deserve a big round of applause and all the support that they can get.
Okay. Buenas tardes a todos. Como han visto, pues mi nombre es Víctor Hernández. Yo también soy un trabajador agrícola y pues les agradezco a todos que están aquí como estudiantes y otras personas de organizaciones y que hayan venido a escuchar la historia de los trabajadores, que sean reales.
As you've seen, I'm Victor Hernandez, and I'm a farm worker, and I appreciate all of you who are here and others who are here from organizations to hear our story about being farm workers.
Bueno, yo les voy a platicar un poco acerca de la campaña de las licencias. ¿Por qué es tan importante las licencias para nosotros los inmigrantes que estamos en este país y que todo ser humano tiene necesidades?
I'm going to talk to you a little bit about our driver's license campaign and why it's really important that all of us want driver's licenses as human beings in this planet.
Lo cual hablo yo acerca de la campaña de las licencias que pues organizaciones o las personas o alumnos que nos pueden apoyar con esta campaña.
And I just want to ask a little bit of you all share with you about the campaign so that the organizations here and the students can support us.
Porque pues nosotros como trabajadores trabajamos 12 horas, 13 horas y no poder ir a la tienda a poder comprar la comida que nosotros trabajamos 12 horas, 13 horas, nos sacrificamos trabajando en eso y nosotros no podemos ir a comprar esa comida que nosotros producimos.
So as you know, we work 12, 13 hours shifts, and then at the end of a shift, we can't get to the store to go buy the same food that we worked so hard to produce.
Y otro de eso, de que hay muchas personas acá que tienen hijos o enfermedades en el trabajo, y si no tienes carro, si no tienes cómo movilizarte, simplemente vas a estar dependiendo de alguna persona, como le decimos nosotros, raiteros, que nos van a llevar, y pues esas personas que manejan a veces 25 minutos, allá nos están cobrando $60, $70.
And so those of us who have children, if your kids get sick or we get sick, we don't have a way to get to where we need to go. So we depend on people who we call raiteros or drivers. And sometimes for like a 25-minute ride, they'll charge us $60, $70.
Y entonces es por eso de que para nosotros la licencia no es un gusto, para nosotros la licencia es un beneficio, porque como dije hace rato, todas las personas seamos de diferentes colores, diferentes países que seamos, pero todos tenemos una necesidad como enfermedades y tenemos que comer, tenemos que salir a visitar familiares o a distraernos un rato y no estar en casa ahí estresado, viviendo con estrés, con muchas cosas, pero...
And so that's why I always say that driving and the ability to be able to have a driver's license is not a privilege. It's really important. It's a necessity for us. That we are people of all different colors from all different countries, and we have a need to eat, and we want to visit each other. We want to visit our friends. We want to be able to get out of our house and be distracted a little bit instead of staying home and just being there and not being able to go anywhere.
Y entonces, pues yo hablo también un poco de eso porque yo trabajé en un rancho de vacas donde tuve casi 5 accidentes en ese rancho, y de los 5 accidentes, el patrón nunca me llevó al doctor. Lo que él decía, llama a alguna persona que te lleve al doctor, eso es lo que decía. Entonces, yo soy humano, todos somos humanos, necesitamos... Como ellos necesitan de nosotros, también nosotros necesitamos de ellos, pero también que nos ayuden en la forma de si tengamos algún accidente en sus ranchos.
I'm talking about this especially because I suffered through 5 accidents on my farm, and not once did the employer bring me to get medical attention. And so, you know, we're all humans. I'm a human, and just like the same way that farmers need us, we need their help.
Yo creo que el tiempo es muy poco, entonces si tienen preguntas así aquí como para todos nosotros los compañeros que están acá, y pues estaremos dispuestos para responder sus preguntas. Y muchísimas gracias, personas que nos quieren acompañar. Como siempre hemos tenido alumnos en Geneseo, por la Alianza Agrícola, que pues está formado de voluntarios y alumnos, y pues ojalá que en donde quiera que nos escuchen, que los alumnos nos puedan apoyar.
So I think that you'll probably have some questions for us, and we just really want to ask for your support and help. In Geneseo, we have SUNY Geneseo students who are supporting the Alianza Agrícola Agricultural Alliance, and so wherever there are students or people who want to help, we'd really like your support.
Y esas son mis pocas palabras y muchísimas gracias por escucharnos.
And these are my few words. Thanks for. I think we need a break, right?
So thank you for your presentations. There's some really great food out there, and so what we're thinking is to take a break for about 5 minutes. We can go get refreshments and we can enjoy the food for a little bit and then come back for a Q&A. The food, it cannot come here in this area, and so we're going to have to just kind of eat it there and try to make it back for a Q&A. Okay? Thank you. Vamos a tomar un break por 5 minutos, comer algo y volver a las preguntas. ¿Ok? Sí, hay comida.